One of the people that I often turn to, particularly when it comes to international issues or conflicts, one of the people whose opinion I have the greatest respect for, is sometimes just only thought of as, the kind of in-your-face performance artist activist that has made Code Pink so famous. But Medea Benjamin has written some just extraordinary, in-depth books and other writings on foreign policy. Her book, Kingdom of the Unjust, Behind the U.S.-Saudi Connection, is must-reading for everybody in America. Her analysis and understanding of what's going on in Cuba caused me to join a Code Pink group, Louise and I, to visit Havana last year. We had a wonderful time. I strongly encourage you to check them out. And so, as things are falling apart, as the wheels are coming off in Venezuela, we reached out to Medea to see if she was also an expert or an authority in that part of the world, and she has considerable knowledge. So I wanted to bring her on and talk about it. Medea Benjamin is with us. Medea, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tom. Good to be on with you.
It's great to have you. And I should add your Twitter handle is Medea, M-E-D-E-A, Benjamin. And people can, Code Pink, obviously, codepink.org or globalexchange.org. So we've got, Chavez dies. Maduro was his kind of number two guy. He becomes president. Then he runs for election, gets reelected recently, just in the last few months, I guess. And the United States and Canada, which is the part that really had me scratching my head, and a number of other countries, including some European countries, are actually recognizing the guy who ran against him. This would be the equivalent of countries saying, after the election here in November 2016, that's all very good that Donald Trump won the presidency, but Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes than he did, and there's considerable evidence of illegal voter suppression across, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio. More people were thrown off the voting rolls than voted for Trump in those states. And so we're going to recognize Hillary Clinton as president of the United States. Or am I overstating this?
Well, maybe you should compare it to saying Nancy Pelosi should be head of state, because you can say our elections are quite fraudulent, and I would say with all the money in our elections, they're not very democratic. And then you could say that Donald Trump is incapable of running this government, and so Nancy Pelosi, we're going to declare her president. And some people might think, great, and I'm sure in Venezuela a lot of people are saying great. But you know what? That's not the way things should work.
Yeah, I'm with you. So what's happened in Venezuela and what's going on? How did we get to this situation?
Well, it's important to recognize, Tom, that the economic situation is dire and that a lot of it has to be attributed to terrible mismanagement on the part of the government, corruption in the government. But we also have to recognize that a good part of it is also the economic sanctions. And when you hear the Trump administration talking about how much we care about the Venezuelan people, well, one good thing would be to lift the sanctions, because they really are affecting the lives of ordinary people who are really hurting.
That's really interesting. Medea, one of the things that I learned years ago that just changed my thinking on all this is that there's basically two ways to produce inflation. One is to debase a currency, which is what Germany did in the early 30s. And happened in Zimbabwe, where the government intentionally devalues their own currency, and thus you have inflation. The other is to have a loss of an absolutely necessary part of your economy, typically a commodity. This is what happened in the United States in the 1970s with the Arab oil boycott, or embargo rather, and it made oil so scarce in the United States, the price of oil went to $100 a barrel. And the consequence of that was that produced inflation through the rest of the economy, because pretty much everything runs on oil in the United States. So, but with I think they're talking 10,000% inflation in Venezuela. Is that the result of a government decision to debase their currency, or is that the result of our embargo causing certain necessary pieces of the economy, food, for example, or it could even be something as unusual but still, essential as toilet paper, that's just not available, and so the price is being driven up insanely, and that produces the inflation. What's going on? How's it happening?
Well, you hit the two of them, and then you implied the third, talking about the oil embargo. We have to also say that the price of oil went from over $100 a barrel till down to about $30. So the government lost a third of its revenue with the wild inflation of the oil market. Now, other countries have done a much better job at dealing with that. Venezuela had all these social programs that were initiated under Chavez that building 2 million new houses for people, allowing anybody who wanted to get free education all the way through college, free medical care, all of these things. And those expenses didn't go down, but when they had a third of the revenue that they had, and then with the U.S. sanctions, part of it is that Venezuela can't use the banking system. So its economy is totally crippled. And now the U.S. is saying that it's seizing Venezuelan assets and going to give them over to this parallel government that it created. That money, even separate from oil, the money that the Venezuelans had in England that was in gold reserves is now going to be given, they're saying, to this parallel government. According to the Venezuelans, I mean, who knows? We can't take those figures on face value, but they say that the U.S. economic sanctions in the last year alone has cost the economy $23 billion. Now, even if they exaggerated that, and it was half of that, it's many billions of dollars, which is why for many Venezuelans, when Mike Pompeo said, we care so much about Venezuela, we're going to give them in humanitarian aid $20 million, and them meaning not the present government, but this parallel government, many people in Venezuela said, wait a minute, you cost us over $20 billion, and now you're going to give us 20 million crumbs. So the situation is dire for a complex variety of reasons. The question really is how to move forward. And the way that the U.S. is proposing it now is really very, very scary. It seems to me like when you try to divide the military, and they're going home to home of people in the military saying, abandon the government, go with us, when the U.S. is helping to orchestrate this whole thing from Washington, when they bring in people like Elliot Abrams, who is known for his support of right-wing death squads, this is all leading in one direction, and that is towards a civil war in Venezuela. You have such a polarized society, Tom, with at least 6 million people who support the government and then millions of others who don't support the government. The only way out of this situation that's not going to be a violent one is through negotiations, and that's why the proposals put forward by Mexico and Uruguay are so critical, and we should be saying, yes, let's pull our support and give it to those two countries that have a very good reputation in Latin America and say we want them to be the mediators.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, I understand also that now Russia is jumping into this act. If civil war were to break out in Venezuela, could it be like the Vietnamese War, where essentially it's a proxy war, it's the U.S. agents against Russian agents? And if so, what does that lead us to? Imagine.
I think the kind of horror that we're seeing in Syria could happen in Venezuela. And there are a number of people I've been talking to who hate the Maduro government, who are really worried about what they're calling the Syriazation of their country, because, as you say, Russia has a huge stake in Venezuela, as does China. Russia, because of the debt that Venezuela has, and Russia has lent them a massive amount of money, now owns 49.9% of Citgo, the Venezuelan oil company. And China has major investments and big debts that the Venezuelans owe. So there is a lot of economic interest at hand. Your listeners should know that Venezuela does have the world's largest oil reserves. So
even larger than Saudi Arabia?
Even larger than Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
So this is a place that people are not going to wipe their hands easily and say, oh, we'll let the U.S. figure this out. No, you have big countries like China and Russia who are standing behind Maduro. You also have division inside Latin America. When I was at the Organization of American States and got up at the end of Pompeo's talk to say, don't support a coup in Venezuela, there was a lot of applause in the room because half of the countries now at the Organization of American States are supporting Maduro and the other half are opposing him. So these splits are intense.
Wow. What can average Americans do? Call their senator at 202-224-3121 or their member of the House and say, here's my opinion, or what? I mean, is there...
You know, we elect these people precisely, I mean, to deal with our issues here at home, but also to be there when there are international crises and be level-headed about these things. And so far, only 6 members of Congress, that's in the House and the Senate, so out of 535, only 6 of them have so far come out with statements either calling for negotiations or non-intervention. And so we really need to get on them. There's a letter that's going to be released today from the office of Congressman Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal from the Progressive Caucus, and we need to get a lot of Congress people to sign on to that. So I would say, yes, call your congressperson and say, we want to hear from you, whether it's signing on to a letter, a statement from your office, a tweet, whatever it is, saying that you believe in the principle of non-intervention.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Extraordinary. Medea Benjamin, activist, co-founder, Code Pink and Global Exchange. Her new book, which you must have, if you have not read Medea's book, Kingdom of the Unjust, Behind the U.S.-Saudi Connection, get it today. CodePink.org is the website. Medea Benjamin, at Medea, MEDEABENJAMIN, is her Twitter handle. Thanks so much, Medea.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Always great talking with you. I always learn something from you. I really appreciate it. We'll be right back.